Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the best journeys we go on are those that we don't even know we're on that journey. We're growing, we're progressing, we're becoming a better version of ourselves. And I've gotten to a point in my life that I don't want to do something that's not with intent. I don't want to do something just for the point of doing it. I want to I want to be a father intentionally. I want to be a husband intentionally. And whenever I got stressed, I ate. Whenever I got tired, I ate. Whenever I felt lonely, I ate. It's like, okay. And I figured to myself, they make pants in my size still. So I'll just keep buying new pants and it doesn't matter. And self-care is not selfish. When you think about all the things that are important in your life, and you think about if your job is important, your family is important, your marriage is important, your friendships are important, your hobbies are, all those things are important. There's one common denominator in all those things, and that's you.
Listen, are you the kind of guy who somebody would look up to? You know, you excel at things in life, and because that, people seek you out for advice. But inside while all this is going on, there's an avalanche of pain and anxiety that comes upon you. At times it can be even crippling. This scenario is far more common than we realize, especially for men. And with the suicide still being in the top 5 killers of men, the numbers are proving that we need to figure out how to handle our anxiety and our mental health. Well, if this is you, stick around because my guest today has been to hell and back, and as he shares his story about what he's gone through to get himself right. Now, in the meantime, if you're interested in raising your standards as a father, a husband, and an entrepreneur, then I encourage you to participate in our Band of Brothers group mentoring program. We're just a group of ordinary guys working towards living extraordinary lives. You can find us at the Awakened Man Training Academy at members.theawakenedman.net. And with that, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Welcome everyone to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of the Awakened Man movement and your host, Alan Devonso. Before we get into anything, I'd just like to ask you a couple of questions. When was the last time that you felt anxious about something? And what was your coping mechanism, or how have you been coping with it? All of us will eventually deal with some form of mental health crisis. And the coping mechanisms we use to deal with these can either help us or push us further into misery. The key is to find out what works for you and then deploying that strategy. So to help us with that today, my guest is going to share his battle with mental health and what he's done to manage it. As a former collegiate athlete, Marc Paisant uses physical fitness to assist with his mental health. He has learned that both can be combined and used to help work through any life issue. And as a certified personal trainer and the creator and host of the Relatively Normal podcast, Marc shares his experience with ADHD, anxiety, and depression. And his goal is to inspire others to ask for help and in the end, end the stigma when it comes to mental health awareness. Welcome to the show, Marc. How are things today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me. It is totally my privilege. Thank you for everything you're doing. This is amazing. So I'm just really happy to be here.
Oh, I'm just grateful to have you on the show. I know this is such a big topic for us to talk about, especially for men. And as I was saying about talking about, just the suicide rate alone, those statistics are scary enough. But before we get into all that, I just want to have you share with us a little bit more about your hero's journey. We always talk about all of us being on that journey. And tell us about a particular time in your life where you felt challenged, maybe even felt lost, and knew things had to change. What did you do? And how did that experience shape you into the man you are today and the work you're doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the best journeys we go on are those that we don't even know we're on that journey. We have no idea where we're growing, we're progressing, we're becoming a better version of ourselves. And as I talk about on my show, it's like it's not about changing who you are, it's finding who you are. It's a big difference there. And, from an early age, from being a teenager, I had these feelings that I never really knew how to express. Like as a young man, you don't know how to express it. You don't know if you should express it. Are your friends going to make fun of you? Are you going to be accepted? Do you have to put on that macho personality? Do you have to always try to impress the girls? And as I got older into adulthood, I noticed that I never worked through that. I never, built coping mechanisms. I never found a way to become the best version of myself. And there's plenty of journeys I can talk about, but the one I like talking about the most is the one I've been on, lately in the past, probably 12 to 14 months, where I noticed in my life, I was at one time or another focusing on my mental health and really getting right mentally. And then another part of my life, I'd be really focusing on my physical health and thinking one would take care of the other. Thinking if I lost a bunch of weight, got in shape, then mentally I'd be there. Or if mentally I worked on my meditation, worked on my therapy sessions, worked on my mindfulness, then I'd just be motivated to go to the gym or go for a run. And what I noticed is that I couldn't do one without the other. One did not take care of the other. I had to be intentional at times with both my mental and my physical health. So I did what so many people do, or some people don't do, I should say, is I decided to get a personal trainer because, like I was doing in my past with having a therapist work on my mental health, I said, let me get somebody who can push me and who can help me find that physical health balance. And what happened is I really started to go to the gym, go to my runs, and it was the first time in my life I was intentional about my physical health. And I thought to myself, like, wow, I'm working on both at the same time. Every few weeks I have a therapy session and I'm writing in my journal and I'm being expressive. I'm talking about my feelings, but then I'm being very proactive with my physical health. And a light just came on. And, I'm in my 40s and I wasn't upset with myself that I hadn't done it earlier, but I was like, I'm getting there. I'm working on this. And I think what I've been trying to, show people and tell people is that it's okay not to know how to do something. Like, it's okay to ask for, I have asked for help mentally and physically in my life. And I'm not weak for it. I am not a coward for it. I'm not less of a man for it. I think I'm fairly brave for it because I knew I needed help and I reached out for that help. So that's the journey I'm in right now. And I didn't, about 6-8 months in, I was like, oh, I like this journey. I'm in this journey. This is nice. I like it. So that's what I like to talk about now.
Absolutely. And just love that story about that latest journey, right? And that's really what it's all about. And you used a word there that's so powerful, and that was intentional. Mm-hmm. And some of the work that we're doing here at the Awakened Man, especially at the start of the year, every January, I ask the guys that we work with, if you were to just find one word that you would describe yourself for this year, what would that be? And for me, it was the word intentional. And this is the second person that I've interviewed on the podcast that have used that word. So something must be aligning with this, because just to your point, right? You're physically fit, yourself as a personal trainer, you're doing work, but until you applied intention,
right?
You're just going, it's really almost like going through the motions, isn't it?
It definitely is. And coming from a person who I never built structure for myself. I played soccer from the age of 6 and basketball from the age of 8. At no point did I have to force myself to be in good physical shape. I always had a season. I always had a preseason. I always had conditioning drills. I always had that. So I was never, I can look back on my youth and my teenage years and my college years and say, without any kind of regret, I wasn't intentional with it. I had someone who was intentionally trying to make me better. I had a coach, a trainer, someone who was trying to make me a better soccer player, a better basketball player. But I never learned that myself. And it wasn't until after I left that I realized all the hard work that people had tried to instill in me that I didn't get. And looking back, there were some coaches that I didn't agree with. I didn't align with. They just, the coach and I just didn't get along. And there's other coaches that I did get along with. But in my brain, and this is how a lot of people with anxiety, depression think about things, I heard the coach that I didn't align with a lot louder than I heard the coach that was proactively trying to build me up. Like that, something must be wrong with that. They're seeing, no, that person doesn't exist. The person who's getting beat down, that's the Mark that exists. Mm-hmm. And it got to a point where I just gave up. And when I mean I gave up, I said, you know what, this is my life. Overweight, eating poorly, not making great life decisions, spending too much money, spending money I didn't have. I just decided that this is who I am. This is the person I am. And thank God for the woman I married, and thank God for the people around me and the family I have that never gave up on me. And even if they said things that I didn't want to hear, they had the courage to say things. And the things I didn't want to hear, let's be honest, they weren't bad. It wasn't like you're a terrible person. It was, Mark, we see your potential. We see what you've done. We believe in you. And, when a person has, high functioning anxiety or even depressive symptoms, their mind doesn't hear that. Or my mind didn't hear it. My mind heard, you're letting everybody down. You're a failure. And, thank God for having such a great family. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know how it happened, but I picked some really good friends in my life too. You would think somebody like me would pick some, but I like to, I stole a line from one of our great lost rappers in the States, Mac Miller, who needs friends when you have brothers? And that's how I feel about my friends.
Nice.
And they're, the conversations, and I know what you do for a living. I know how you talk to men. I know how you try to build them up and make them, really care about themselves and care about other men. Looking back, the conversations I had with my male friends were unlike probably the normal conversations you think you have with men. Like, we got into conversations where we talked about our feelings. We talked about our relationships. We talked about the things that upset us. We didn't just blow the other person off and say, let's go grab a beer and forget about tonight. We didn't do that. And I feel very blessed to have those people in my life, and we still have those conversations. And it's amazing that, you and I use the word intentional, but I want to be I've gotten to a point in my life that I don't want to do something that's not with intent. I don't want to do something just for the point of doing it. I want to be a father intentionally. I want to be a husband intentionally. I want to be a role model, a friend, a coach, a leader, an employee, a coworker. I want to be all those things intentionally because I want someone to see what I'm doing and say, I can do that too. I can do that too. I don't want to do it and be alone. I want others to follow what I'm doing.
Yeah, I love that. Just such great nuggets in there. I just want to pull a couple of them and really dive in a little bit more. You talked about that voice, and you talked about it in two different ways. You talked about it being loud, mm-hmm. and then you also talked about it being, changing the narrative of what was being put there. And I just wanted to go a little bit more about that loudness, because that's when you said that, I just go, that's exactly what happens to me as well. When there's, when that, the devil and the angel on the shoulder, it seems like this one guy is just a little bit louder, mm-hmm. and, a little bit more forceful. And I'm wondering if in your work and in your journey, have you figured out why that is? And what did you do to be able to tame that aspect? And then let's get into about the changing the narrative.
Yeah, it's a gift and a curse, and I'll explain this to people who might not understand high functioning anxiety, and because there's a big difference between, like, everybody has a certain level of anxiety. It's what makes us human. our ancestors and Neanderthals, whenever they heard a crack at night, they knew that they had to be anxious about, is that going to come and eat my family? Like, it's inherent in us to be anxious to a level. However, when someone with high functioning anxiety, like I'll take myself, for example, I'm very, in a lot of the jobs I've had in the last 10 to 12 years, I've been a high level performer. And I would love to say that's just my drive to be great at what I do. But in my head, it's my drive not to be bad at what I do. And there's a big difference there. There's a huge difference there. Because what it means is, whenever, first, I'm a yes man. I can't tell you no. Like, if I tell you no, I feel that I'm failing you. Even though someone will say to me, Mark, tell me no if you want to. I know you're busy. Tell me no if you want to. No, I can't say that. And then secondly, I feel the weight of the world on everything I do. I feel every presentation I make, the president, the queen, the prime minister, everyone is going to be there watching it, critiquing it. So I go over every presentation tenfold. I review every paper multiple times, not just spell check. I'll review. So my anxiety is making me good at my job, but at what cost? And I think a lot of people don't understand that, because they'll hear the term high functioning anxiety and they'll just use it kind of blasé and say, oh yeah, I know. Like, we don't, unless you have it, you really don't know what it means, because it means you want to succeed at your job, or succeed as a coach, succeed as a father, succeed at all these things in life. But the reason you don't want to succeed is because you think you have everyone in the world watching you. And that is so stressful. That is so frustrating. It's high blood pressure wrapped into nervousness, wrapped into anxiety, wrapped everything. And then I can't shut it off. I can't. What I do, or what I have to do, is I just have to figure out coping mechanisms. And you know what? The best people I've worked with, who I've explained this to, have been really good. And they'll tell me, Mark, you've done enough. Shut it down. You're good. You're fine. Like, I want you to log off now. Like, do it. So I just want it. It's not that voice is telling me bad things, but I constantly live in the what if portion of my life. What if I don't get this done? What if I show up 15 minutes late? What if I'm a failure? What if this project that I've worked so hard on absolutely bombs? What if, put in a negative result? That's how my brain works. And I've had to learn to live with it. It's not that I can just shut that up. Believe me, if I could shut this off, I would. But that's just who I am.
Absolutely. And because you have the recognition today of what's going on with you, I'm suspecting that the energy and your physical health, even though you're very dedicated to that aspect of it, having that much anxiety does put a physical toll on our body, whether that's through sickness and other things that comes through. Now that you have that awareness, it must have been able to reduce that for you and give you a sense of, what's going on, and it's part of who Mark is, but it sounds like it has less control over you. Does that be a fair statement?
It's amazing you say that, because this journey I've been on, like I was just talking about, is really about the mind-body connection, really about, the physical and the feelings kind of coming together. And they have a huge stake in what the other does. And I'll give you an absolutely perfect example. When I was in my early to mid 20s, and, I'd gotten, the 9 to 5, and I'm out on my own, and I'm making my own money, and I'm dealing with my own, quarterly business reviews and my yearly reviews and all that stuff. And I'd miss a bunch of days at work because of a mysterious stomach ache. Like, I'd wake up in the morning and just be bent over with so much pain in my stomach, to the point where I went to ERs, I went to the urgent care, I made doctor's appointments. I had endoscopies done. I had x-rays. I had all these things done. And every doctor told me the same thing. We can't find anything physically wrong with you. And I was walking through, I'd taken a day off because of the stomach pain. And I remember I felt good enough to leave the house early evening. And my boss called me just to check on me. Picked up the phone and I was just talking with her, and she said something about something I was working on, and immediately my pain goes to my stomach. And I was in a store and I was almost bent over. And she says, like stress can cause things like this. And I was just like, no, what are you talking about? That. And then I started to kind of mark when I got those physical ailments in my stomach. Mm-hmm. And it would be high stress, high anxiety. And at that point, I was still learning a lot about, again, early to mid 20s, by age, you're an adult, but you're still learning the world. You're still learning a lot about your reactions and how your body and how your mind works. And I noticed every time I got ultra stressed or ultra anxious, I got these debilitating pains in the side of my stomach to a point where I couldn't eat. I couldn't stand up. And that kind of got me on this thing where I have to find something to do to cope with these feelings. Like I can't go on eating poorly. Like I talk about all the time. The only thing I've been addicted to in my life has been food. Like food, specifically sugary, like that's the only thing I've been addicted to in my life. It was my go-to. And whenever I got stressed, I ate. Whenever I got tired, I ate. Whenever I felt lonely, I ate. It's like, okay. And I figured to myself, they make pants in my size still. So I'll just keep buying new pants and it doesn't matter. And after a while, it's like, okay, you could possibly be pre-diabetic. Your family has a history of high blood pressure. I had swollen joints, back pain. Yeah, I was like, what's going, like, come on. Like, and thank God for friends who are like, hey man, you got pretty tired walking up the stairs, we haven't seen you since college and you were fit back then. Now what's going on? And I wouldn't call it a wake-up call, more because a wake-up call, like it happened suddenly. It's like I had a wake-up call. I had I had something, I had a heart attack, or I had something happened immediately in a wake-up call. But my friends started having kids. And I saw them with their kids and I was like, I'm not going to be around for mine if I keep doing this. I didn't have kids at the time, but I'm like, I love the idea of being a dad. My dad's still alive and we talk every day. I love talking to him. I love conversing with him. I love just the thought of fatherhood. And I said, I'm going to take that away from myself if I don't make some kind of changes in my life.
Gotta love that, right? And it's about finding that bigger why, about making that change and that pivot, right? And the other thing, just to go back and you started to touch on changing that narrative, right? Of when people are trying to show you the better side of something or the silver lining, and then it sounded like you were just like, yeah, but you still wasn't sure if that was meant for you to be positive. But then it sounds like as you did some work though, you started to change that narrative again and started to be a little bit more positive. And it sounds like that journey now is you've moved from that place of self-deprecation to more of self-love and self-care.
So those two words, self-deprecation, and they fit me to a T for most of my life. And let me kind of give you a background. So, from the moment my brother and I have a twin brother, we stepped on a soccer and basketball field. We were one of the top players on every team we played on. Most teams, we were the top two players. We were both, all state, all region, both got college scholarships to go play soccer. All county, all honorable mention, all state in basketball, like two sport athletes. We played AAU. The club team was ranked, in the top 4 in the country. Our high school team was ranked number 1. Like, I'm not saying this stuff to to hype myself up, but I want to kind of just show you where I was in my career as an amateur athlete. Like I was great at what I did. I was the number one goalkeeper in Georgia for 2 years in a row. No, just I was good at what I did, and I worked hard at what I did. But something, and I'll be honest with you, something changed with me when I went to college because, and I think a lot of athletes know this feeling. I was the MVP on my soccer team and basketball team my senior year in college. I went to Clemson to play soccer, and everyone was the MVP on their soccer team in high school. And it's amazing how some guys deal with that, where they just have that bravado and they just have that alpha, and they just walk on the field and say, which one of you guys is coming second? Because I'm going to be number one. And I never had that. I got on that field and I was like, I don't belong here. And I can't tell you why I thought that. I've never been an ultra competitive person. That's just not my nature. I've always kind of been a laid back, go with the flow type person. And high school, I could get away with that. In college, I could not get away with that because everyone is the man. Everyone's fighting for the starting position. Everyone wants to be the person that the school talks about. Everyone wants to be that person. I didn't really care about that. Would I have liked to play? Yeah. Would I want to start? Yes. Would I want to win championships? Of course. But I wasn't the type of person that was going to step over other people to get there. When 90% of my teammates would have gladly stepped over me to get to the top. And so being in the minority there, it made me think something's wrong with me. Why don't I feel like these guys? And I'll tell you right now, for the longest time, I tried to be like them. And it almost ruined me. Like for the longest time, I tried to be that guy and walk around with my chest puffed out and look down on people who weren't in sports. And I tried to be that person. And I couldn't. I just couldn't be that person. And I felt worse and worse about myself. Like, what's wrong? Like, why can't I just project this? And I ended up quitting my senior year. I had 2 years. I was redshirted as a freshman. I had 2 years of eligibility left, and I ended up quitting. Because I knew that wasn't me. Like the game had passed me. I had no love for it anymore. I loved my teammates, really good. I stay in contact with a lot of them to this day. But the game had passed me by. And I think that may have been, looking back, that may have been the first step to this whole thing for me, where I remember calling my dad and telling him I'm done. I'm quitting a game I've loved for most of my life, and I don't want to do it. And I never thought in a million years I'd ever say, like watching the World Cup this year, I enjoyed it so much. Watching European soccer, watching, German soccer. It's just, it gives me a lot of joy, the beauty of the game. And, watching NBA basketball, watching EuroLeague, watching it, just the ball move, everything gives me so much pleasure. And at a point in my life, I hated all of it. And I'm not saying that's not hyperbole. I hated all of it. I didn't go to one soccer game my senior. I didn't go see my teammates play one game my senior year because I hated the game. And all because I thought I didn't deserve to play it. I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought and no one told me that. It's amazing. No one told me that. So this leaked into my professional career where I thought I wasn't good enough for jobs. It leaked into relationships where I thought I'm not good enough for her. It leaked into friendships where I said I'm the one that made mistakes. And that self-deprecation I made once I started working out, going to the gym and being intentional about what I was doing. I made a promise to myself. I said, I'm going to do everything I can to start loving the person I am. And I I did a few episodes on the human body, and it was called, Let's Get Naked. And it was basically about looking at your body and understanding this is what you were given. This is the gift you were given as a human. And I didn't want to hate my body anymore. I didn't want to hate anything about it. Yeah, we all got wrinkles. As we get older, we see those, those birthmarks get a little pronounced, and we, like, I've lost hair. Like, it is what it is. But it's like, guess what? I woke up on the right side of the ground today. And I'm going to do everything I can now to not only take care of this body, take care of this mind, but learn to love it at the same time, because I want my girls to feel the same way. I don't want them to grow up and hate anything about them like I did. I want them to grow up to be beautiful, smart, intelligent, self-loving young women.
Oh, outstanding, my friend. Outstanding. Just love that. And what I really like that is about how you had tried. And I wonder how many of us as men do this, where we try to be something that we're not. And then we find out that when we do that and we live out of our authenticity, regardless of what that looks like, and we choose to do that, how much more pain we bring into our lives. And so I wanted to kind of dovetail into you talked about how, with your group of brothers, your friends there, you would have the different kinds of conversations. So how, as you would be talking with other men, how would you ask them to, or teach them to start conversations about talking about their feelings and talking about their emotions? How do you get that even started?
Well, if that was a one-word answer, I'd use the word empathy, and I'll explain that to you. And I was blessed to be born as an overly empathetic person. And a lot of high-functioning anxiety people do have a lot of empathy because we're always thinking about what others are thinking. But I would do it in a different way. Like, for some reason, how my brain is built and how genetically I was predisposed, like, I'm always thinking about the other person, and especially the little person, the person who doesn't have as much of a say. And I know this, and I try to use it every day. And sometimes I'm overly empathetic, but I've had friends, and it's one of those things where I've always been very careful about the people I get close to. And this was something my father taught me, and my brother and my sister. And he always told us to just, be careful of the people you let in your lives. Cause once they get close to you, they know everything about you, and you want to make sure you have positive influences in your life. And so I took that with me everywhere I went. And people would always say that Mark's so nice and he's so funny and so outgoing. However, if you look back, I had the same people around me all the time, and it wasn't a large group of people. And I'm very suspicious of people who give too much information too quickly in conversation or in relationships. Because as much as I don't know you, you don't know me. And that tells me a lot about your character if you're telling me deep, dark family secrets within 5 minutes of meeting me. And that happens more than people know. And it's just, I'm not judging that person, but at the same time, I'm like, if we got close and I told you things that physically upset me or mentally upset me or deep and dark to me, or how quickly would you just let those things go out in the open to new people? So it's funny that the friends I have, it's different when, we would go out for a drink or go out for a beer, and same, conversations would start about work and relationships and the kids and all that, if they had kids. But then I would always think to myself, and I don't know where this comes from, I guess it's just predisposed to it. I always think to myself, how is this person feeling about that though? Like somebody, and we do this and I tell people all this time about the difference between men and women expressing themselves, because we both do it. Men and women express themselves, but we do it differently. Women are more outgoing, and they'll group text a bunch of friends. Oh, I had a lousy day. You can't believe what happened. This happened. I feel down. And women are great about being able to express how they feel. What men will do is we'll say one or two sentences, and oh man, what a day today. And we'll leave it at that. But that's a man saying, I need to vent. I need to talk about it. I have feelings I want. And it's up to us as the listeners, as the male friends, to pause the TV, to turn off the TV, to turn off the radio, to put the phone down, to say, hey man, what's going on? Talk to me about it. What's happening? But what we do a lot of the times is, especially and I'm guilty of this too, but especially when I had roommates, especially when I was younger, man, what a day. Like I can't even, that's crazy what happened today. All right, let's go to the bar, grab a beer. We're going to forget about everything. It's like, that's not helping anything. And, the first time that another grown man cries in front of you,
yeah,
and says, I lost her, or I lost my job, or my father's sick, or I don't know what to do. And you're there. And the great part about that's a terrible situation to be in, but the great part about it is that person is vulnerable enough to trust you in that situation.
Mm.
And a lot of times we don't see that. We feel it's awkward. We feel that, oh man, what do I do? Let me call somebody. No, that person thinks the world of you because they're being vulnerable in front of you. And that is our cue to step up and be a friend. And I've for the most of my life, I've thought that way. I was, in my middle school, our counselors had this program that students can kind of be these adjunct counselors for other students. And I signed up immediately. I wanted to learn about that. I wanted to be available for kids who need to go through something. And that's just who I am. And I like doing that. I like being in those situations. I like being in those conversations. And I know it's awkward to a lot of people. I understand that. And you can learn it. But I want to get down to the feelings. I don't want you to just tell me what happens. I want you to tell me what made you feel this way. And I want to be able to listen and help you out.
Yeah, absolutely. And so true about what you're saying there about when men go to talk about things. And I see it all the time with my two buddies. And it truly, if it's more than about 4 words, right, then that's about it. And you got to decipher it. But because I've been on this journey over the last 2 to 3 years of doing men's work, because I finally got to a point in my life as well of just being frustrated of where my life was at, and not really being intentional with making change. Mm-hmm. And so when you do get into those uncomfortable conversations, of course it's going to be really nerve-wracking, because how are you going to deal with it? And I find myself now, and I don't know if this is true for you, but I find that sometimes it's hard for me even to keep the emotions back. Like I'm right in there with it. And I think when to your point, when they have that much trust in you that they're willing to share their deepest, darkest fear, whatever it is that's driving them to have to reach out, that we can be that vessel to hold that for them, just means so much more than, because otherwise the choice is that they're not going to do anything with it. They're going to stuff it. And ultimately that never really ends up well for themselves or for others, right? It's just poor.
And you mentioned at the start of the show, and I mentioned this as much as I can about the suicide rates among men, mm-hmm. and which is unfortunate. It's not talked about that much, but it correlates to, do men feel they have the proper avenues or the outlets to express themselves? Mm-hmm. Do they have the ability to say, I can't do this. I need help. I feel weak. I feel vulnerable. And for people to accept that that's okay for them to feel that way. Or is it a man thinking, I'm less of a man because I feel no one's going to listen to me. No one's going to pay attention to me. Why am I even here? Why do I have these feelings? And I really think every once in a while I'll put a blast out to my friends and I'll text them and I'll just say something simple as, hey, was thinking about you, hope you're well, let's catch up soon. And simple things like that. It's funny, my wife has a group of girlfriends, and every week, every 2 weeks, there's this text chain going, and they're getting together and they're grabbing wine and they're going to somebody else's house and they're talking about their lives and what's going on. And here I am, I'm really a homebody, and she always gets on me, but hey, you should go out more and you should, and I'm good where I am. However, I'm thinking about the man that doesn't have my family, doesn't have my wife, doesn't live in the neighborhood I live in, have, the people around, and lives in that 1-bedroom apartment, and maybe just like me. But all they need is that text message that says, hey, we haven't talked in a while. I hope you're doing well. Let's catch up soon. And how long does that take? That takes 5 seconds to do. It takes 5 seconds. People always ask me, Mark, how do I start the conversation? ... Mark, how do I get people involved? ... When was the last time you reached out to one of your closest friends and just said, I'm just thinking about you?
Yeah.
This world would be the men in this world would be they'd feel so much better about themselves, because I understand there are differences in how we see the world and the social impact on what we have and the responsibilities we have, and whether they're socially or they're fiscally or they're whatever. I understand that we're trying to work through the social norms and the mores and all that. I understand we're trying to work through all that stuff.
Yeah.
But there's still a difference in how we look at mental health in men. And we think we allow women, and it's amazing, women allow women to be vulnerable. But men, we still got to work with each other. And I'm telling you right now, if you're listening to my voice right now and you have any of those feelings in your head, one, know that there's people who love the fact that you're alive and breathing today. People love that fact. And secondly, send 5 friends a text message right now and say, I was just thinking about you. Let's catch up soon. I hope you're doing well. And just see how good that feels for both parties. Like, it's so, I hate, if it sounds easy, it's because it is. It is. But yeah, it's something. And that's why I do my show. That's why I talk to people like you. And that's why, I want men to feel comfortable, in their own skin. So that's kind of, let's be a friend to each other. Let's do that.
Yeah, I completely love that. And it's so true. And really what you're saying, Mark, is that those of us that need to model what it is, how to be able to do that, to share, to start that process, and doing your work and the work you're doing with your podcast. And so let's dive into a little bit about the Relatively Normal podcast. How long have you been doing it? What are your goals for it? And what really made you want to start the podcast?
So we are on season 5. I believe I'm in the 3rd or 4th year of doing it. And I didn't really see it going this long, but I've just had some amazing guests and some amazing feedback. I'll get into the genesis of it, but I remember after recording my first show and putting it out there, just being a nervous wreck. It's me talking. I don't think I have any background music. I don't think I have anything, no intro. I don't know. I can't remember. And I get like 4 or 5 text messages in the first few days, and they all say, listen to the show. Thanks for saying all the things that I've been thinking.
Nice.
And all from men. Because the reason I did it is because I wanted to go from a man's perspective on mental health and especially a Black man's perspective and how we see the world, and making sure there's a voice out there for everybody. And I don't know how you felt when you had your first show, but I'm like, no one's going to listen to this. I was like, no one's going to listen to this. So to get that first text message, I was like, okay, maybe I'm doing something right. But, I had a few years back, I had a really amazing therapist in Herndon, Virginia. And I was having a really bad day, really bad. I'd come in and it's one of those days that nothing was particularly bad, but my mental state was not good. I was drained, in a bad headspace. The sun was out, but it was raining in my head. So, and I remember my therapist asked me, he's like, Mark, let me just stop you. Tell me what you want. Like in your head, what do you want? And I told him, I said, I just want to be normal. And he asked me, he said, well, what does normal look like to you? I was like, the people walking by me on the street who are happy, who don't have a care in the world, who aren't worrying about things that don't affect them. Like, I don't want these anxious feelings. I don't want to feel down for no reason. Like, I just want to be normal. And he told me that this is my normal. Like there's science involved, there's synapses involved, there's also behavioral trauma. There's all these things involved, which makes me Marc Paisant. And he said, this is your normal. And we're just going to work on your coping mechanisms, and we're going to work on having you see the world through a different lens. So your normal is relative. And I was like, no one's ever explained it to me that way before. No one's ever told me that I'm okay in my own skin. Yeah. No one's ever said that to me. And it totally changed my perspective on mental health. And we had a bunch of good sessions in a row. And I thought to myself, like, I need to tell my story. Like, I want other people to see the benefits of just being open and vulnerable and working on yourself. Let's be honest. Like, we're working on ourselves. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let me try the podcast. And I did the whole YouTube university and got the right mic and listened to some different podcasts. And I said, I want mine to sound this way. And then I got the best advice I've ever gotten in regard to podcasting. And it's from, I think the podcaster's name is Sarah Benincasa, and she is a comedian in America. And all she wrote was, your first episode is supposed to be terrible. And I was like, done. I'm putting it out there. Like, I'm putting it out there. So since then, I've had some people on the show to talk about their journeys. I've had some therapists and psychologists. I've had a few women who've gone through postpartum to talk about it. And my mission has been simple, and it's just to end the stigma in regard to this conversation. There's women who have babies and have postpartum that are afraid to talk about it. There's people who come back from war that have nightmares every night that don't want to talk about it. There are, there's racial things, there's gender equality things, there's all these things where people are afraid to live in their own skin and they don't want to talk about it. It's like, if I can be a voice for them to say, hey, this 6'5" Black man in America has feelings, and sometimes he feels bad, maybe they'll open up and have those same conversations.
Well, by the sounds of the length of the podcast and how long the longevity, I should say, that you've had it, you're doing a phenomenal job with it, Mark. And I just want to commend you on that, because we need to create containers, and we need to create multiple kinds of containers, because not every voice is going to work for everybody. And we
Correct.
need to be able to come from the different perspectives of what we bring to the table. And that's exactly what you're doing. We could go on for quite a while here on this topic. And I just wanted to say that, if there was something maybe we haven't had a chance to touch on yet, or something you would like our listeners to take away, like that one thing you'd like them to remember about our conversation, what would that be today?
Self-care is not selfish. When you think about all the things that are important in your life, when you think about if your job is important, your family is important, your marriage is important, your friendships are important, your hobbies all those things are important. There's one common denominator in all those things, and that's you. So it took me a long time to figure that out. I did everything for everyone else in my life. And I don't know if people know this, but a cup can only hold so much liquid. And it can, at the same time, it can only pour out so much liquid.
Sure.
So make sure And I'm not telling everybody to go get a membership or go get a physical therapist or a physical trainer or anything like that. What I'm saying is that when the sun's outside, go outside and walk for 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. When you have a chance to connect with an old friend, say, hey, you know what? I'm going to take 30 minutes off of work and I'm going to go have lunch with my friend. When you get a chance to go to your child's school to have lunch with them, careers come and go, hobbies come and go, all these things come and go, but we only get one of these. You only get a limited amount of trips around the sun on this blue ball we live on. Mm-hmm. So make sure that if you get a chance, not if you get a chance, but make sure you understand that self-care is not selfish. Take care of yourself, take mental health breaks, take mental health days, and be open and honest with people about it. I used to tell people that I had a doctor's appointment or I had a thing I had to go to. That got to the point where it was like, hey, I got a therapy session. That got to the point where it's like, you know what? I need a mental health day. And you'd be surprised how many people are accepting nowadays of that stuff, because burnout is real. Mm-hmm. People just hating the jobs they do these things are real. So don't ever lose sight of the fact that you are an important part of your own life, because a lot of people miss that sometimes. I missed it for the most of my life, but self-care is not selfish. Take care of yourselves.
Oh, I love that. What a powerful way to wind up our time together. I just want to say thank you once again, Marc, for spending time with me today. And we unpacked quite a bit and did set a bit of a path for people who are struggling with mental health to be able to find their way through it and really live a more fulfilling life. So if men were interested in getting a hold of you and maybe involved in any programs you're working on, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
So right now, I want to say this, like if you reach out to me on social media, I respond, and it doesn't matter what you're going through. If you need somebody to vent to or somebody to talk to, please reach out to me. I will definitely respond and talk to you. But, IG and Facebook is Relatively Normal Podcast. You can follow my fitness journey at Paisant_fitness, and the website for the personal training will be coming soon. And as always, I love to tell people that if you're feeling any certain way or you're in crisis, please just dial 988 in the States for the crisis helpline, and someone will pick up to help you. There are people that want to help and love the fact that you're alive today. So please reach out if you need any help.
Love that. Well, I'll make sure all that information is in the show notes. Just want to say one more time, thank you so much, Marc, for being on the show.
Definitely my pleasure. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.